All right, everybody, I am back. I'm with a guest. I'm very super excited about this. I'm with Liliana Petrova, and we are going to be talking about some very amazing stuff today that has revolutionized the service industry, and it will keep revolutionizing the service industry. But how far can we actually go is the question with this whole overall picture here, because we're talking about guest interaction, technology, and we're going to relate it to a hospitality world of restaurants. So, Liliana, it's so great to have you on. And we've had a couple conversations already, and I'm super excited about your experience, what you've done, and how you can enlighten us restaurateurs, what's here, what the reality is, what's here, and what's coming, and with all of your experience in this realm. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your career up until your JetBlue experience.
Thank you, Marcus, and thank you for having me. Well, my career started in a not so fancy industry, the utility industry. I was a budget coordinator, and it was my first job out of college. What I remember about this job is, surprisingly, this is where I learned how to write emails. Believe it or not, when I joined, I knew a lot about the actual job because I finished in economics. My undergrad was in finance and economics, but I had a little bit of trouble writing those persuasive emails. And I had a phenomenal leader that, of course, during that time I found annoying because she kept editing my emails. But as I progressed in my career, I realized she gave me the biggest gift. And then after a couple of years of that, I moved into the banking industry. I joined Royal Bank of Canada. I think to this day, this is probably the hardest part of my career. It was 4 pretty difficult years, but they gave me the accounting school, I would say. It's one thing to go to school and study accounting. It's a completely different thing to go and learn how to actually manage a business and accounting. I think this experience gave me a very solid credibility as a leader later on in my career. And now when I mentor people, I kind of force the junior crowd to go and endure the finance and the banking for a couple of years, because I think it's a phenomenal base for anything you do after. And then I went to my graduate school phase in NYU. And after that, I joined JetBlue Airways.
Excellent. So you said some really key points there before we jump into your JetBlue experience. Emails, people say emails are dead, email marketing's gone, and I don't believe that at all. And there's an art to emails, and it makes a world of difference, just to study copywriting, lead-in lines. It's amazing. People often overlook the power of what email is, especially in mass marketing and direct marketing. It's amazing. I absolutely love email. So I think that's a great point that you said that, you learned email, because, I haven't been in, I take a lot of educational things because I'm interested in bettering myself. And I go to a lot of seminars and things like that. And very seldom, in school, obviously, emails just coming up when I was in college, but there was never the art of emails. And so, and I think that's one of the lacking things but a lot of business owners just say, oh, emails are dead. Marcus, you only get a 10% open rate. And I'm like, well, that's a numbers game. 10,000 people, 10% open rate. And I just recently broke this down to somebody. I said, I sent out 7,000 emails. 650 people clicked the link in there, which I knew they were interested in a topic. Out of the 650, 150 people clicked the link 3 times, which I knew they were highly interested. And I went in and targeted those people. And I had 18 people hand me $4,000 each to go on a trip. So to say email marketing doesn't work, they're just not working it properly. Is there anything that you can shed on email marketing or just on the art of email?
Well, I think what you said is exactly right. We're talking about numbers game. It's a small percent. I'm reading now a great book about consulting. It's called the $1 Million Consulting. And he says there that direct marketing will always work because all you need is sometimes a one, right? You can send 20,000 copies, but you know what? If you get one good customer, and in consulting, it can be the right one that will give you $200,000-300,000 of business, then it works. So my kind of philosophy is exactly what you were saying, was don't think the small percentage is a problem. Work the base to be big enough, and target. Know who you want to reach. So copy is very important. And if you have people that don't react, that means they're not your target, and that's fine. You want to reach the person you want to reach, and not just kind of like randomly send stuff. I think with any marketing channel, that is the key, and it's a team that's coming up, and technology is helping with it. It's true personalization. It may give you a little bit of a headache in the beginning because you can't just click the button. You may have to do a little more prep work before you launch your campaigns. But if you do it, it's just going to be more efficient.
Excellent. So, I mean, exactly. You have $1 million customer. You have one. If it pays for itself, you never know who's going to open that email. So you mentioned a book, The $1 Million Marketing. Who writes that? Who wrote that book? Who's the author? Weiss,
Weiss. It's $1 Million Consulting, but he's walking you through how to build your own business. He specifically talks about consulting, and that's kind of where I'm interested in. A great foundations about any business.
Great, I will definitely check that out. You also mentioned accounting. Now, as a culinary student, I took 2 semesters of accounting, 101 and 102. And I do that. It wasn't part of the curriculum in culinary school because they would teach us, taught us cost control. But the reality is every student is going to culinary school thinking, I want to open my own restaurant. And what happens is, along the cycle there, they become a really good cook. Maybe they become a great sous chef or a good executive chef. And they take those cooking credentials, and then they try to put those cooking credentials into a business. And a lot of them, unfortunately, fail. They don't understand accounting. I've interviewed a lot of people. I've had a lot of people that have come to me that I've paid decent money, that have come from the corporate world, that have had great careers, long careers, and they can't figure simple ratios out, equations. I'm like, food costs, and they're totally off base. So the accounting element, I feel, is crucial. If you want to be in business, take accounting courses, go to local community college, do something, take an accounting course. That's what I did. And that's one of the differences between me and the chefs that didn't, because I'm very numbers oriented, ratio oriented. And you can apply that's kind of stuff into recipes too. Ratios, that kind of stuff goes into cooking as well. So anything else you want to say on accounting, in the accounting world?
I would say I have a very good friend that had to do QuickBooks for years backwards because they did not think this was important. They owned a restaurant in New Jersey, so I would say do not do not procrastinate the minutia of QuickBooks, and just keeping on top of your stuff, because going back and doing this in rear is absolute nightmare. I saw it with my own eyes. These 2 guys, they were a family-owned business. They went through hell for at least 6 months just to get their books in order.
Wow.
So, yeah. And it was kind of funny because they were exactly that. Like, he's the chef, and, they just thought they're fine. And then, unfortunately, they had to file for bankruptcy. So they needed a lot of paperwork. So I'm not saying it always will happen to you, but it's something that you need to just do.
Right. I feel that when people tell their cousin, their aunt, their friend, oh, you should open a restaurant because you make great blueberry pies, they're actually doing a disservice to these people, because, they have no idea their accounting skills and under stress. They've never seen them under stress. Opening a restaurant, being in business, that's financing and stress. And at home baking blueberry pies, you don't experience any of that. Working for somebody else, your levels of stress and finances are throttled way down because you're not the one who's ultimately responsible for signing the paychecks. So, and this is why most restaurants fail. Great chefs fail because they're not business people. And this is why sometimes partnerships work really, really great, because you have a money guy, or a person that knows that, and the person knows how to cook in some cases. So JetBlue, I like JetBlue. We fly JetBlue when we can. I've never had a negative experience with JetBlue. Let's talk about JetBlue.
Sure. Well, JetBlue is going to stay in my life as the most formative 7.5 years of my life. Fantastic leadership, great culture, entrepreneurial spirit, we can do it attitude. I mean, they just have it all. I started in a very controversial kind of way because after graduate school, I took a job in HR, and I took a demotion from where I was in the bank. So most of my friends were like, "What are you doing? You know, you're not making the stats of our school." but it was the best thing I did. They promised a very entrepreneurial and an open-minded attitude towards my ideas and kind of opportunity to build a business. And they did not lie. I ended up having different roles in the company. After a year and a half in HR, I spent a year in finance, and I chose to do finance for airports so I could learn the intricacies of how you run an operation. So I traveled for 1 year across the big stations of the airline and learned how airports and flights and the operations kind of world of the airline, which helped me tremendously later on. After that experience, I went to marketing, and the experience there was unique because I had privilege, and I actually don't say that lightly, the privilege to work with the most creative and passionate marketing team. These guys at the time had, I don't know where the energy came from, but they had amazing ideas. They would just go in the middle of the night in the airport and shoot their own stuff, post it on Facebook. I mean, we just had that, that time of having real fun and conveying brand values across in a very authentic way that just came from within. Nobody told them to do it. They just love the brand they worked for so much that it came through in their work. And then last but not least, my last role was in customer experience, where I had the privilege to work on a lot of design and creation of experiences, both in the physical spaces of JetBlue Airways and the digital properties.
Excellent. So you said something really cool about the passion coming through in the workplace, just how passionate they were. And, that says a lot for the culture of the business. I mean, you walk in, here's the reality of the airlines is people feel helpless. They walk in, they're being told where to go, what to do, when to do it. If you're not on the plane, we're closing the doors. It's like a lot of people feel totally helpless as a customer. And you can tell, like I saw somebody post yesterday on Facebook thinking about using this airline, and they mentioned a name, and there were 30 comments, don't do it, they're the worst, do it. And, so and I went on that airline before too, and I was going to make a comment, and I was going to say, don't do it, but there was no reason for me to convey that negative energy when all these other people did it. The person was warned properly. So you had talked to me before about customer flow, accessibility of employees there. Tell us about that, because I think that for me as an airline customer, the unaccessibility, my voice isn't getting heard, things like that really can turn an experience terrible, especially if you're sitting there locked on a plane on a runway, like when are we taking off? It's just, or you sit there with delay after delay after delay. It's things can get for the traveler a little frustrating.
Yeah, I hear you. I think kind of a blanket statement about airlines in general, in their defense, is that the actual act of taking off on time is an extremely complex system. So there's so many things in the back end that needs to happen at the exact scheduled time. While there's so many variables that are not controlled by the airlines that could cause delay in one of the pieces, and that can kind of roll down and delay a plane and a flight. In their defense, the complexity that the airlines as an industry they have, I don't think exists in any other customer-facing places. There may be other places where precision and being on time is not as big of a value for the product, and even though there might be complexities there, they're not, you know what I mean? They're not part of the value prop. Here, this is it. You know, we know that taking off on time is the most important thing for the customer, and at the same time is the hardest thing to do for an airline. So getting it right is actually very, very hard. And that's where this passion and culture comes back to being a very big differentiator, both for Southwest and for JetBlue, because it's proven that when people are self-motivated and driven, they will go the extra mile. And in the airline industry, the extra mile is sometimes the differentiator between taking off on time or not. And when I was in the operation, what surprised me, even the trucks that you see on the ground that you think are not related to your plane are actually very related to you taking off on time. Getting the food on a plane, simple stuff can just trip the whole thing. In terms of layout, and overall kind of design of experiences, I think what I always speak to my peers is I think it's very important to really walk in your customers' shoes and have empathy in the design phase of your experience. It might be physical or digital, but in the physical space particularly, it's really important. When we were working on the JFK lobby, when we started looking at the flow of people, we didn't just leave it on chance. We didn't say, okay, we want to buy this infrastructure, we want to buy that many kiosks, and we want to put this many podiums. Had we done this without the analysis of what we want to happen in that space, we probably were going to get it wrong. But because we started with, okay, what do we want to deliver from customer value? Oh, we want people to move. We don't want to have lines. We want to have a feeling of sleekness and open a space. We want to have like that Apple feel. Okay, what else do we want? Well, we want to have some place where if you have a wheelchair need, you can go, but that's actually visible. So we put this input in the what, in the beginning, not in the end, where people usually do first the design and they're like, okay, now who's coming here? Oh, where do we put them? And then they start patching. It's a very different approach to design. And it really saves you so much more work and trouble later on, because now you design with the customer in mind. That's pretty much the true essence of it, is you really have the customer in mind at the very beginning. And then you start flowing it. So in our case, we were able to create engineering models and say, okay, if we want people at that specific part of the lobby to wait 2 minutes max, what does that mean about how many kiosks we have? If we want people to move very fast from the second touch point, what does that mean? Oh, that means the technology needs to be very fast. Okay, what does very fast mean? Oh, I wanted that many seconds. Well, this was very crucial, because then when you started the build out and you start talking to your business partners and they're like, what do you want? You are very clear. And when you're very clear, they are very clear of what success means to them. So they build the right processing power behind. What that means to them, you don't care, but you've given the right parameter to the people that you depend on. So I think there's a lot to be said about the mindset when you start in the beginning.
That is so crucial, what you said. Starting with the end in mind, and then going back, because some people just start with what they think is right, looking at what's in front of them without going to the end and working back. And I really like how you broke it down into saying, they need to spend so much time here, so much time here, so much time here, and this is the overall and working it back. I find the most successful business people typically start with the end in mind, and then work back. So you also said that there's so many key components to getting that plane off on time. It's like a restaurant. If you see a delivery truck down the block, that delivery truck might be for my restaurant, and I might need food on that truck to get out on a table. So when your food doesn't come out, it might not be the chef. It might be that the table before you was late.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't order. They lingered longer. There's so many variables to get the food out on time. And most restaurateurs, when they design their kitchen, or realistically what happens is they inherit a kitchen because they take over a already has a kitchen built, and they just adapt what's already given to them without thinking of the end in mind. And of course, most people are on a budget. So they deal with their physical parameters, and they really don't understand and put themselves in the guest's shoes. And I like how you said, put yourself in the guest's shoes. I teach my staff, walk through the front door. Greeted. Walk and see if there's paper. Walk and see how the door handle, clean, or the windows clean. Just walk through the front door. I, even as an owner, will park in the front sometimes later at night when I know the restaurant's starting to close, because I want to see what's going on through the windows and what's happening. So let's talk about how we can adapt this end in mind process for restaurateurs, the physical space, things like that.
For restaurants, I think what you need to do is literally think. So I kind of want to add one more before we go there. One more element. It's the design for feelings. We also need to be able to design how they will feel in that space, not just how they will move through the space. And I think that makes a huge difference.
I'm glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that, because I teach my coaching students that we're in the emotion world, and you market based on emotions, and it's how people feel when they're, and I don't know if you've read the new Seth Godin book, but he says the dog food industry is $24 billion strong. The dog has no say. The owner of the owner is never going to eat it. And so it's all how the owner feels. It's all a feeling. It's a feeling-based business. So, and when I tell people that scenario, they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. I need to convey my message better, the feeling message better, and really execute that feeling.
Yeah. Well, in terms of restaurants, going back to your previous question, I think I had a meeting with some of my colleagues yesterday talking about the space, just the design of the space, and it was a different purpose. But we talked about guiding principles of discovery, like having a space that is kind of like open and you can see everything, and there's no curving and no exploration, is much more, I don't want to say boring, but it doesn't create that feeling of like, I'm about to be special, I'm about to find something. Where if you have space that has the function and a feeling of some sort of a surprise or discovery or specialness, I think that creates much more excitement in the experience that you're gonna go through. So for restaurants, I would say, if I walk in a restaurant and it's kind of one of these open spaces and everybody's like a little, the old school feel of a restaurant, I immediately am like, okay, it's nice, but it's nothing amazing. And I know it costs more to have more of a fun shapes and curves, but I would say that probably would create more of an engagement right from when you enter. The other thing I always talk about is the barriers of spaces. So when we were doing the lobbies, we had these podiums that created a physical barrier between our crew members and the customer. And inevitably, people act according to their space So our crew members would be a little more, that's my podium, that's where my safe zone is. So that hospitality feel of like, let me reach out to you, let me help this child, let me pick up this for you wouldn't happen because people were like in their safe zone and that's my space. When we removed the podiums, we created this openness and our crew members were just naturally more interactive and more hospitable with our guests. So I always, when I see, we're talking about a registration desk, for example, for a conference that had, these tables that like you're sitting and you cannot see me because I'm like under and behind. That doesn't create any open feeling. So I would think in the restaurant business about the hostess, for example, we have this host concept, and I was a hostess, so I know, and I had my podium too. What function really the podium has? Yeah, we used to have the phone, but now we have open table. So now you have like the iPad is a tool for the hostess as well today. So we no longer need to be next to that wall and pick up the phone if we design it that way. So I kind of see that host podium as something of the past, but that's just me.
I agree with that host podium. We're having this conversation, and my best experience is when I walk into a store and there's no really true register that you have to stand behind. The person comes up to you with the iPad, they help you through, they walk you through, and then once they figure everything up, then you can either go to that cash register or you can even pay right then and there. And I just think even when you get in line at a store, if they come out to you with the scanner and scan, I think Sam's Club does this. They come out and they scan you before you even get to, it just helps that whole flow and it makes it more interactive. So this podium thing is very interesting, and how you said it, that the crew members are out, that it's not really their space anymore, and they're more willing to reach out. And this is all just like a psychology. It's just people do things and they don't realize what they're really doing, and changes like that just naturally happen. And it's amazing because whether you're the guest or the crew member, there's those kind of physical changes really make a difference, and it makes that warm feeling, that likable feeling of the company, of the employees. So that's really amazing. So in the restaurant world, you mentioned things like shapes, interesting things like that. So when you walk into a restaurant, do you look at the layout? Are you looking at the decor? Are you looking at how the employees flow? What exactly, when you walk into a restaurant, you say, wow, this restaurant has a great feeling?
I think the first thing is the space for me. I'll give you an example. Let's say I go to Brooklyn and there's this Brooklyn feel of the rusty, earthy theme of a space. It immediately kind of, it calls out an emotion in me of something. Let's say, oh, this is trendy. Space, color, materials, they speak very loud. And I think people undermine how loud that message is, but it's pretty loud. And what you want to be perceived at and how you want people to feel is very much controlled by the space. If you have a space with a wine rack or like wallpapers, that's one feel. If you have the modern look of, more of the metal stuff and no wood, no brown, that's kind of more of to me at least, a transaction statement. It's not a space that says, chill, take your time. If the wood and the dark, the brown and the greens are more like, for me, welcoming and let's just relax. And I think depending on who your customer is, I think people should think about the space feel before the flow. The people moving is, to me, second. The first is just kind of how the space speaks to me.
Okay, great. Some very good information. I know, just to mention one last thing on the podium, for me, sometimes when I walk into a restaurant, when that podium's there and the servers, the hostess is there, I feel like there's almost like a stop sign, right?
Yes.
Stop. don't go
I
past
agree.
without my permission.
Yeah.
And, you know, and like you're looking in,
Yeah.
like, and they're like, can I help you?
Yes.
I'm just looking in to see what's
Yeah.
happening in the dining room. Can I go to the bar or, you know, over this, you know? So
Yeah.
that thing is, I can totally see it. But in the restaurant world, we still have to have some kind of check-in system. So, you know, by throwing away the podium and not having that person there might not be the best answer for everybody. I know in my restaurant, we don't have a podium. We have a piano. And it's the job of every
Nice.
single person on staff to greet one person to greet the person at the door. So whether you're at a table that's by the front door, you just look at our guests and say, excuse me one moment, I just need to say hello. And you turn around and say hello, we'll be right with you. Just something like that to greet them is really key, as opposed to them just standing there at an empty podium and like, well, there's nobody here, or I got that stop sign. We walked into a place in Nashville the other day, and there's 3 hostesses, and they're all sitting there on their phone, on their cell phones. And I'm like, well, who are they paying attention to? It's like,
Nobody.
nobody, right? And it drove me crazy. And I don't really say things that much. And I actually said something to them. I said, I just read this neat article that staff members on their cell phones get 14% less tips. And they all put their phones away.
I love that you use data though. That's amazing.
Yeah, I just made that number up, but I just, you know, I just said that. And
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny that you say that, because when we were in JetBlue considering cell phones for our airport crew members, we were thinking, so now we have, when you board a plane, we have the podium again there for different reasons. And just before I left, we were discussing how we can make those crew members. And we had a chat about cell phones, but we deliberately said we don't want cell phones, because with cell phones, the crew members will have access to everything else. And we had that whole kind of strategy that we want hospitality to be a part of what we offer. So with iPads, it's a little more difficult to get lost. So it's interesting that you mentioned that.
great. So you said hospitality. So personal interaction is what made the hospitality industry, right? And that's what makes a lot of industries, is that personal interaction. So with all the new tech advances, and the good old days of paying attention 100% to the guests and everything going through real people, just talk about how important, I guess, the personal interaction is, and the balance of tech here.
Yeah, and I get that question asked a lot. I think the key here is the control and the design. Back to who is in charge. There's so much technology out there today that people can easily get lost in all the cool, fancy stuff that's out. If you're able to use and leverage and control technology to eliminate the transactions that are just, you know, repetitious, painful, or just kind of administrative tasks in the experience, then you free the space between the host of whatever experience there is and the guest to have an interaction and a conversation. And I think that's where people, when we see technology implemented badly, is when the balance is off and there's too much technology. So now, let's say when you do have need of help, you can't find the phone number, or there's no people at all. They just removed everybody.
No people. That is so. When I don't mind ordering on an iPad. I don't mind, but I want to ask the server what's good. And if I can't have a conversation with the server, ordering on the iPad is frustrating for me. And
agreed.
But you know, and some places balance that well, and some places don't at all, and you feel helpless. Like, well, what am I really ordering? Like, and if I order this, can I subtract it, delete it? Can I modify it? And it's very frustrating. And because you feel, again, helpless. So keep going just about because again, this is all balancing, and I encourage restaurant owners to take advantage of technology. We need technology. It's 100%. It's the reality of what we're doing. And some restaurateurs are still fighting a website. Well, I don't really need a website. I don't really. And I'm like, oh, I'm pulling my hair out. And they're like, well, I don't really need a Facebook. I don't really, and you really don't need a full register either, do you? Is how I respond to them. So it's just we're in the world, and this is what's happening. This is how people communicate. This is how people do business. So you have to have the tech stuff there. And I'm sorry, I just had to interact with that because it was just, and we were in a situation. Maybe it was in an airport or something. The iPads were there, and we're like, I just don't want to talk to a staff member. Like trying to flag down a staff member was so tough. It's like I just want to know where the Sauvignon Blanc's from. I just want a little taste of it. And you can't do that on the iPad.
No. And I mean, back to websites. Today, there is no business cards, there are websites. If you don't have a website, you don't exist. And I think if people don't understand that, then they really need to get to the 21st century, because we don't even exchange business cards anymore in some industries. It's all about your LinkedIn profile as a person, for your personal brand. And if you have a business, it will be the website. What else is there?
Right, exactly. So somebody just sent me this yesterday. I don't know if you can see this, but
yes, I can.
It says, can you keep a secret? Another guy goes, sure. It goes, I've had a website for 2 years now and nobody knows it. So,
oh my God, I love this.
People put up a website sometimes think they never ever need to change it. They never think they don't understand the marketing. Well, I paid somebody to do it, so it must be fine. Is there any light you can shed on websites?
I actually would like this. I would text you to send this to somebody. Well, okay, here is what the truth about websites. I personally am, I think everything you do should reflect, again, your brand values, your brand message and promise. And the website is the first place where you're given this amazing channel to many people. So it's an optimizer. To me, a website is an optimizer. Now I can broadcast, and it's easy because I can be found and then I can push. So it's a two-way thing as well. So the website is really powerful tool if designed properly. In my partnership with Stacy Sherman, the woman that connected us, I am the website person. That's kind of how it happened. I didn't choose it, but that's how it ended up being. I guess I'm the night bird, so I had more time. And now that I'm optimizing our own website, I have more funding to get support. People are telling me, hey, your website is really nice. Hey, your website is one of the websites I really enjoy working on. People say, what? You know, a tech person tells you that they enjoy working on your website? Like, that is crazy. And I think it's because it's just nice. You know what I mean? I applied the same principles on this build out as I did for the lobby of JetBlue, for example. It's the extra mile. It's always the extra mile. A yellow box, does it need a black rim? No. But is it nice to put it? Yes. Does it differentiate you? Yes. You know, I was giving an example at a work meeting yesterday with the IT, talking about the JetBlue kiosks in the JFK lobby. When you have these discussions with technology, what is must-have and need-have, and what's nice to have. In big corporate world, that's a huge discussion, ongoing freaking discussion. It's a healthy friction, we call it, because a lot of times technology says, that's just nice to have. You don't really need to do it. The kiosks now have blue lights, blue rim light that just kind of the contours of the kiosk lights up at night. Well, guess what? Without that, at night, the lobby wouldn't have that effect that it has now.
Very cool.
And that was nice to have, according to technology. For me, it was a must-have. So it's the same with the building out of a website. If you take the canned template that everybody can just download, you're not going to be differentiated. You're going to look like any other website. if you go and learn a little bit how to customize that template, you may as well say I exist, because now you're gonna show who you are, not who a pre-designed template is.
Right, exactly. I think that one of the biggest problems with websites is that anybody can build one now, because it's companies out there, it's drag and drop technology, and they
Yeah.
show you a 30-second commercial and look at this professional website that I just built. And so a lot of people take it on themselves, and they don't understand search engine optimization. They don't understand the psychology of the buyer. They don't understand how to create emotions. They think they have a great picture, and they put it up. And I often go to a restaurant, I look at their website and go, are you a furniture store or a restaurant? Because I see bar stools. Like, am I buying bar stools, or am I buying an emotional experience of coming to dine with you? And they look at me and they're like, oh my gosh, well, most times the first thing they say is, well, I paid somebody to do that. I paid a web designer.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But let's talk about like bringing this up to the next notch. Like, that's okay. But what are some really things that you must have on your website to convert people in those 3 to 7 seconds of their attention span, if it's even 7 seconds more. So, and what would you say was the first advance in websites? I'm sorry, not in websites, in restaurants.
Sorry, my hands-free just died, so we'll do it this way.
Okay. So looking at the industry from the 60s, 70s, the 80s, what would you think? What's the first advancement that, or some of the bigger advancements that have happened in our industry?
To me, it's definitely OpenTable. The whole ability of securing a table. Like, just think about all the friction that just that one thing created for all of us. Now, first, I can reserve a table without calling. I can also give feedback, because now they ask me for feedback without actually going anywhere. I can share the information, so that saves me more texting or calling or whatever mean of communication you had with your friends and family members to communicate where the restaurant is and what time they should be there. But it also, I remember having calls of people, where is the restaurant again? Like, the actual time that they're supposed to be there. Now everybody can just open the OpenTable thing and say, oh yeah, I should be going this way or that way. I think the true innovation to me is solving many problems and removing stupid transaction from our lives, things that you keep doing and they don't add value. At the end of the day, if you think about calling all of these people to make us just be at some location at the same time, with so much effort just to get us started. We haven't even started the meeting or the dinner, and we already are working hard to get it started. That's, I think, a brilliant application of technology.
Yeah. So we love OpenTable. We just started using it recently, and it's amazing the business they send you and how people the feedback we're getting from it, how it's easy. Even our regular guests are using it, and we're like, why didn't you pick the phone up to call us? With one conversation we had, they were like, well, because it's so easy to use it, and we use it all the time. And so OpenTable's done a really good job with that platform. Technology and guest resistance. How do you feel about this? And we've kind of like touched on the balance of, touch on the balance of too much tech, less human interaction, but really the overall perception of technology and guest resistance. Can you comment on that?
Of course. I think it's overrated, personally. I think it's all how you weave it into the experience. I remember when we were doing the lobbies, we went to San Juan, and we were told how people in South America in general would not be that open to technology. I can tell you, people were loving it. If you solve problems with technology, nobody will be like, no, let me just keep having the problem. I'm fine. Nobody. We had people that didn't know English that well. We had people of all ages. Everybody loved it, because now they were like, oh, I'm not going to be online. If you find a real problem and you solve it, people will run to this technology. The thing is, like you said, if you just put an iPad and it's too obvious that it's to cut costs or to bring efficiency, people are like, okay, now I see you're doing something for you. You're not doing something for me, you know? And that's when the resistance is. The resistance is when the customer says, I am not getting any value here. Only you are getting value. So why should I do this? I think that's very big differentiator. And another thing on technology and acceptance, I would say, is the biometrics thing we did at the airport for facial recognition boarding. It was probably the most advanced technology and kind of scary technology we've applied because it used cameras for boarding. And again, the design of how seamless it was and the fact that you didn't need to show any boarding pass, any passport, any documentation, you just needed to stop in front of a camera for a few seconds, made this experience fun. Like, it became a game. We saw little kids pose with their parents going to Aruba. I mean, it just lightened up the whole boarding experience. And it wasn't, we started with like, oh my God, is there going to be adoption, to wow, people are just having fun, creating that whole feeling. The feeling of, oh, time to board became, oh my God, when is my turn? It was amazing to just see how designing it the right way created this amazing feelings.
So you said some amazing points there. Make sure it's solving a problem, right? Make sure the technology is solving a problem. Make sure that it's a two-way street, that it's just not in it for the business. Really key points I think any restaurant or any business can take out of that is make sure it solves a problem. You solve my problem, I'm happy. That's, that's it. But and you make sure it's balanced though, because again, my problem is I want to taste the Sauvignon Blanc and I have to talk to a server to taste the Sauvignon Blanc, but I want to give you my order as fast as I can at that point. So,
I mean, going back before you move, just for the Sauvignon Blanc, because it's really, it's been on my mind since we started talking. There is this whole category of recovery. Like, we called it the recovery in the airline industry, but what you're talking about with the Sauvignon Blanc is kind of the same function. When you design technology, it will never solve 100%. A. B. Just assume that there is always going to be a problem. There's always going to be something that goes wrong. Either the technology is down, or somebody's an exception and wants to taste. Or I think it's important when you build technology solutions to have staffing and hospitality design that is over-indexed for those situations. Because now the person calling upon this is a little frustrated. They already had a fail if they are reaching out for help. So it needs to be an elevated experience to offset the negativity of the disappointment you caused earlier with the failure of the technology. So having this support system, and we call it recovery, designed well and be human, 100% human, is a very important part of the whole design of the technology solution. You can't just stop at the technology. You need to spend equal time kind of beefing it up with a human recovery processes and staffing.
That's so excellent. So while we're on that, how can a restaurant still, are there certain tips or techniques that a restaurant can do to still add personal interactions with the actual guest?
I think one thing to keep in mind is, I don't know, what was the name of this show? Cheers. Everybody knows my name.
Yes.
I think it's so simple and it's so hard to achieve for all of us, restaurants, stores, airlines. The personalization is really showing that you know me at least a little bit. And sometimes you can be cheeky and cheap, and I don't care because it makes me feel good. It can be my birthday. It can be knowing how I like my wine. Some people like it chilled. Some people don't like it chilled. It can be knowing what I ordered last time. Or it can be, like you said, I'm a new guest and you have an opinion. Like there's nothing worse than me going first time somewhere and saying, "Would you give a recommendation?" And the waiter saying, "Everything is good here." I hate this answer. I just hate this answer because you didn't add value. Well, great. I'm exactly where I started. Thank you very much. Having an opinion is not a bad thing. You're still going to make a sale. You're still going to sell me food, but just tell me, guide me somewhere. And if you want, swap it, recommend to one person the salmon, the other person the pork chops. You're still going to not cheat on or like betray your restaurant, but you're going to make a personal connection. Now we have a conversation versus what can I do with like everything's good here? Nothing. Okay, thank you very much.
Right. We always say on the seafood side, this is great. On the meat side, this is, and we sort of add the social authority in there to say, well, this is our most popular dessert. This is our most popular. So they know that they're in hands with other people. So other people did that. Other people love it. So I tell my wait staff this all the time. Our team members, you don't need to know the wine. You just need to know that it's popular. So, this is a very popular. That's a great choice you did. And bring them a little taste. And we tell our guests. They say, I want Chardonnay. And if they've never had the Chardonnay that we serve with a Pinot Noir, we take them a little taste. And a lot of times guests will say, no, pour me the whole glass. And we look at them and we say, I want you to be happy with the whole glass. Let's start with the taste. I have plenty of wine in case you don't like it. And about 20% of the time, 25% of the time, the guests will say, oh, can I try something different?
Yep.
Which means they're going to order 2 glasses as opposed to struggling to get through 1 glass.
Yep. And the Pinot Noir is such a distinct taste that knowing that ahead of time is important to know which wines are more, specific and caprice, like there is a specific acquired taste there. I think the other thing, and I was a hostess and a waitress in my life, knowing your menu empowers you. It's like the toolbox of a wait staff. And I think it's underutilized because when you know your menu, you can have a conversation about the food, and that's where the experience comes. You become the tour guide in the experience of flavors and the journey of just having a nice meal. And you can't even start being that tour guide without knowing the path, right? The menu is the path of the journey that you're inviting people to have. And when you know the menu, you can create different paths because that's the beauty of food. There are many ways to getting happy.
Tour guide of flavors. I love it. That's a great quote. I'm taking notes as we're going along. You're giving some great information.
Sure.
Yeah, this is really good stuff. Tour guide of flavors. I need to convey that role to my to my team members. And I always have told my team members that they're consultants. People are walking in and they need to be told, like, they're ordering Pinot Noir because they can pronounce Pinot Noir. That's why they're ordering all the time. And I told people, this is how I learned how to drink beer. I can only pronounce IPA. Hefeweizen, I couldn't pronounce that when I was 21 years old. I couldn't pronounce Dunkel, all these. I could pronounce IPA, and that's why I ordered, so I could fit in socially with everybody else at the table.
That's so funny.
And that's really the behavior of the guests, is they're just trying to fit in and they just don't know. And you have to guide them. You don't have to like the food personally or that dish, but if it's a bestseller, let them know that. It's really the power of this. And we talked about the likability factor on our interview here. And with the restaurant that we went into in Nashville, besides the 3 hostesses being on their phones, we get to the bar, we ask her for a little taste. She immediately turns her back, no eye contact, barely says anything to us. We get the little taste. She walks away, doesn't come back for 2 minutes. And it's like, really? And it's like so cold and abrupt. And people decide in a tenth of a second if you're likable or not.
Yep.
So
they do.
you have very little time for error. And their first impression is crucial. So we have a policy here that to add that personal experience, we actually send our guests handwritten postcards. So
Nice.
every night we get 5 names because of technology, we know who they are. We know what, we know what they spend because of technology. And we take that technology and then we turn it into a personal touch and handwrite
Nice.
postcards. Thank you for dining with us tonight. Glad you drove 20 minutes or whatever. Glad you're hiking the area, or glad to see you enjoyed your salmon dish, and something just a little personal in there about their experience, and a handwritten postcard. And I've never been to a restaurant that's actually done that.
Nope.
So there's a balance here, but I wouldn't have the ability to do that if the technology wasn't there for me to look in my database in the night and say, so and so ate here, so and so ate here, and here's so it's totally this technology has given us more tools than ever to succeed. But we have to say, what can I do with all this technology now that it's here? Because it's not, you can't ignore it. You have to work with it. So balancing the human touches and personal touch interactions is crucial.
And having so the data by itself doesn't create value, right? It's you who comes up with the offer, with what to do with it, with the insight, the extraction of insight, and then operationalizing it into a product or an experience is where everybody falls short. And that's where the owner or the person in charge is a differentiator. Everybody has access to the technology. It's how you get value out of it, where the art is.
That's 100% correct. I want to give one more example on what we do to give people a good feel for this. So most restaurants have a loyalty program. They know what their guests are spending. They can tabulate and say, okay, these are my top 100 guests. Well, we actually tabulate that every year and invite them in for a party on us. And we call it our top 50 party, our top 50 guests, top 50 from that year, and top 50 of the lifetime of the program. And we throw a party on them, and they know this is for them, that they're our top 50. Again, it's just extracting the data from the technology and putting a personal touch on it. Because every restaurant has the capabilities of doing a top 50 party. Everybody does.
Yeah.
So
everybody.
It's easy. So, and the guests that do that, we allow them to bring in a guest for free. Bring in a guest, show them how much you love us, share the love, and people do that, and it's amazing. We get Yelp reviews and TripAdvisor reviews. I was invited to the elite top 50 party. I'm not a top 50, but my friend is, and I can see why he loves this place. And we get those reviews all the time, and it's great. So, all right. So the tech industry, how far will this go? Can I actually buy a robot to cook burgers? Where when will this stop, and how far will it go?
I don't know. The sky's the limit is the problem. So it all depends on us, to be frank. We spoke offline with you that we all know you can buy this robot. In the airline industry, I saw already sorting systems robots that are going to take your bag and just kind of take it to the plane by themselves. The technology and the robotics, the power of robotics is really, really huge. I think going back to the balance, it's how much we value efficiency as a humankind, and speed and efficiency over experience and personal touch will decide where we stop. And people will tell us and will show us. The good thing about social media today is that, you can hear it loud and clear if they like you or if they don't. So I think we're just going to keep pushing the envelope. And then there will be a point where they will be like, nope, that's enough. And hopefully we'll be there to hear it, because to be frank, some days I do worry that we'll go too far. I do worry some days that it will be very inhuman I don't know if it's our lifetime or my daughter's lifetime, but technology is definitely taking over, and I hope we are there to keep the humanity in it.
Right. I agree. So yes, I've seen pictures of robots cooking burgers, sauteing pans, all that kind of stuff. As a restaurant owner, I look at that and say, this is great. I don't have to pay overtime. They're not going to be late. They're not going to get sick. Of course, you're going to have mechanical problems. That's the first thing I look at. Like, this is great. I don't have to have a back to me. This is. But again, the reality and how far will this actually go? And I remember in the 90s, I used to see the commercials for AT&T, and it's like, soon you'll be able to send a fax from the beach. I'm scratching my head.
Why
I'm
would I
like,
want to do this?
I'm like, that's impossible. How can you get to have a fax machine sitting on the beach, not plugged in, and send the fax? I was like, this is impossible. Now we all know we can make, movie on the beach with our iPhones,
Yes.
at
Yeah.
Hollywood quality, edit it right sit there on our phone and upload it and have 1 million views by the end of the day. It's crazy how
Yeah.
far, they over delivered. That AT&T commercial over delivered from what their commercial was. And I guess maybe people couldn't have comprehended at the time what the real capabilities were. So I'm sure
Mhm.
looking 20 years ahead now, we don't understand what the capabilities really are here. I mean,
Nope.
this is a very big horizon that
It
again,
really is.
that we're approaching, that we need to balance and use it. Don't fight it, use it and help us improve our businesses. So,
Yeah, use it is a great word because I also feel like food is a communication and it's an experiential thing. And if a robot is making a burger, who's gonna taste it? I don't know. There's something about it that feels
right.
not connected. Yeah.
Right. And there's, you can tell, like we do a lot of barbecue. So we have a smoker, and we were in the market to buy a smoker. We had the option of buying an electric one, thermostat, plug it in, just go and have everything automatic. Or we had the
Hmm.
option to buy something that's wood fired, 100% wood fired, that takes somebody monitoring it every half an hour. And the art of that is more impressive than just plugging in and going. It's easy
Yeah.
to plug in and go, but people love to, and I think a young cook, an apprentice chef, they like to learn things that way, that old fashioned way of this is how you really connect with your food. This is how you really connect with whatever you're doing. And there's more passion in watching that smoker every half an hour than plugging in and going back 12 hours later. So
I
there's more
agree.
pride, there's more passion. And I have one person that's all he does. He loves to come in and just smokes all of our barbecue stuff. And he's just so
Nice.
diligent and he loves it. And that's his pride. And, every time he does something, he takes 100 pictures to show everybody. And like,
Yeah.
like, how can you take something away from somebody like that? It's
And you shouldn't, because that's the passion. Going back to culture, that's when you allow people to pour their heart in what they do. Because when you touch, that's how you feel it's yours. The pride comes from doing it, not from pressing a button.
exactly. Well, this has been amazing. This has been an amazing time with you today. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, I have to say this has been a very enjoying experience for me as well. And food is really my passion as well. I'm definitely a foodie. In New York, there's no other way to live here. There's so much diversity. And all I'll say is like, keep doing the good job, guys, because we love eating.
Yes. Do you want to mention anything about your current role with the Fancy Food?
Well, Fancy Food is a great organization that I just joined. This is my, I don't know, maybe fourth week. I'm VP of Member Success, and we are kind of an organization that really supports food producers in the specialty food section of the industry. And we're designing and supporting different programs to support people that would like to venture into the world of cooking and making food for all. I am very excited. We have two food shows, one in San Francisco and one in New York, where we kind of connect buyers and makers of food. Uh, Big events, frequented by you, I heard as well. So
I love
uh,
that show.
we are going also into more experiential kind of way of doing that as well. There are more diverse things these days on the floors of the shows, and we're really excited about that as well. And then I also have a blog. I'm very passionate about customer experience. With my partner, Stacy Sherman, we write a blog called Doing CX Right, where we discuss all kinds of things from customer experience perspective. Design is one topic, measurements, technology, surveys, We cover a lot of culture. How do you create a culture of customer experience? We cover kind of 360 of customer experience, and it's my passion.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. A lot of great value here. And yes, so people must get to the Fancy Food Show, San Francisco, in January, I believe, January, correct? And then June, end of
June
June.
26th, yes, is New
Okay,
York.
New York, which that's the one I always go to. And I love all the pavilions, the different countries. I love all the wine producers that show up. And I love all the relationships that we've formed with a lot of these producers over the years, and a lot of them are there. So it is an amazing, amazing food show. If anybody out there wants to go do something really, really unique, because you get to see the people who are making it from Italy to Egypt to Singapore. I mean, you have all these different groups there, and then the regular part of the show where you have all the suppliers and vendors in the U.S. And it's like everything in the food world is there. It's amazing. So, all right, Liliana, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and hope to talk to you soon.
Sure. If not, I'll see you in New York.
Yes, yes, yes.